Okay, so I've been thinking about this one for a couple of weeks, and the more I see on the internet, the more I decide, okay, what the heck, I'm going to talk about the dreaded topic of whether to blanket or not blanket. And I guess one of the things, it doesn't irritate me whether you blanket or not blanket. That's not like what this is about. But what bothers me are the people that jump on one bandwagon or the other and they don't really know why. It's because this is what their friends do or this is what so and so says. And so they don't want to be made fun of or the odd person out for, being the sissy who blankets or the cold hearted person over here who doesn't blanket. And it's nothing like that as far as I'm concerned. So these are the things that I pay attention to, that I've read about and kind of learned over the years that make me decide whether or not the conditions are such that maybe my animals need a blanket or whether they don't. So first of all, I trail ride now. I have no need for a fancy show coat. I like a nice coat, don't get me wrong. And I grew up trying to keep show coats all winter long for winter shows and then have them looking good in the spring. So I know what that battle is all about. And believe me, one of the nicest things to not being in the show world is not worrying about a hair coat. But anyway, a couple of things that I've seen that I'm not really sure where they come from. And I just feel like there's false information out there, but just, be logical. So I've heard things like blankets actually cause harm because your animal will be colder by wearing a blanket. And that alone just defies the laws of physics. So I'm really not sure where that one came from, unless they qualify that with saying, okay, if you're over blanketing and the weather is warm and they get sweaty underneath, or they go out and act like ding dongs and run around and get all sweaty, they're definitely going to get chilled because water has a very high heat capacity, meaning it takes a lot of energy to raise the temperature of water. And when that evaporates from the body, it steals with it energy in the form of heat. So that would definitely lower your horse's body temperature when you don't want it to be. So I guess just being really careful about not over blanketing, not riding your horse with its blanket on, that type of thing, that can create that moisture under there that's actually going to make them chilled later. So they need to be good and dry under their blanket. A couple of things that also come up is people will defend saying, I have an old animal, I have a thin animal. Absolutely justified. I mean, if we know what keeps heat in and that fat is a thermal layer, and if your animal doesn't have that, or it has a slow metabolism, or it's aging and maybe you just don't want him to be, his body temperature to fall low because then that impacts their immune system and everything else. And they get uncomfortable and they won't move because they're chilled and they're standing still out of the wind, then their guts aren't moving because they're not moving around. They might not go out and get water. Now you've got a colic situation on your hands. So I guess, obviously if you've got an animal that, they're ribby, they're aged, and that happens, they might need some extra help, and that's totally justified. Don't give people a hard time about that. I mean, and that's being conscientious and taking care of our older animals. Again, age and condition makes a big difference. It could be a young horse that was maybe malnourished, could be a little baby horse, little horses, little animals in general. Speaking, horses from Shetlands to Clydesdales, they have very different energy making furnaces in there. So the bigger the animal, the lower the surface area ratio to mass, meaning that they have a huge engine, but a lower surface area than when compared to the mass of a Shetland pony with its surface area in order to lose heat. So a draft horse, a bigger animal, is going to do a much better job of maintaining a body temperature than something small like a Shetland pony. And people might say, well, I've seen Shetland ponies. They grow like 15 inches of hair. They're totally fine. That's why they grow 15 inches of hair, or I exaggerate, maybe 4, 5, whatever. But they're small, so they lose body heat rather quickly. They have those little tiny ears tucked down in there. That also helps them maintain body heat. And that's why they have to grow the extra hair, because they're little. Little people tend to run a lower body temperature. So do little animals, little horses, and whatnot. So that's no different. Think about where your animal came from. And I don't mean just locally around the states type of thing, but look at their origins. If you're dealing with something that is from the north, is probably going to, I'd like to see what the kind of hair coat an Icelandic pony has, because I bet it's amazing. But they're set up for that. They've been surviving in those cold temperatures. And then this is kind of where we get into some of the other breeds. If your breed is a thin-skinned breed and they don't put on a lot of hair, they might need a little more help. All these things, and I have more, play into whether or not you should probably put a blanket on your animal at certain times of the year and not get ridicule from people around you, or don't feel duped into like, oh gosh, I did the wrong thing or whatever. Use your brain, put all these things in perspective. And there are some activities to look for too. But going back to the breed thing, if we look at, because I have a mule and a donkey, and I have a rather fat donkey, so you'd think he has lots of insulation, but he has terrible hair, it seems like, for maybe these conditions. And if you know donkeys, they don't have hair like a horse. It doesn't lay flat. And if you look where donkeys come from, they're from a hot environment. So desert, right? Which deserts get cold in the winter, hot in the daytime, or hot in the cold at night and hot in the daytime. So they have to deal with this multitude of temperatures, but they don't deal with a lot of moisture. So their hair doesn't do a great job of shedding water off from them. If you've ever seen a donkey in the rain, which mine doesn't go in the rain, probably because he knows he's really not suited well for rain, but he gets cold. Even though he has a lot of fat, he is aged, he is old, but he gets cold. And I know he's cold because he comes in, he couldn't stop shaking, he wouldn't eat. And it took me a couple hours, and I now have learned my lesson that he is not tough like that in the winter months, especially if it's cold and damp. He doesn't do very well. But I've heard people say mules are tougher than horses. They can handle the temperature extremes. And I've seen firsthand them handle heat better than horses. With just the amount that they sweat, they don't fret, and they'll stay cool and calm, and they know how to not raise their body temperature. They have half of their origins, a donkey, comes from desert. So they have learned to survive when it's really oppressively hot. But take these ears. All right, so we have the donkey with the gigantic ears. That's not just for hearing. So big ears tend to also increase that surface area that I was talking about. So lots of blood vessels in those ears. And what happens is that is dissipating body heat. So they're big radiators. That's not a good thing in freezing temperatures. Those are the extremities that freeze off, right? I mean, so you don't want thin membranes in cold temperatures. So we look at our mules, and they usually inherit at least a good portion of that ear size. We don't really have a reason to think, if you look at them biologically, that they're designed any better for cold temperatures as a horse. A horse has actually better features with little ears being tucked down when they grow all that hair up around there in the winter than a mule does. They don't fret about it though, which is I think possibly why we just think they're tough. They just take it. They can tolerate a lot and they don't panic about it. So they look calm and comfortable when in reality they're enduring something that maybe isn't terribly comfortable. I watch what mine do, and it's that they don't walk around if they're cold. So the wind's blowing, they don't leave the barn. I want to encourage them to keep active, keep walking around, doing what you normally would, keep eating, keep drinking, and ward off any of those really extreme temperature, wintertime colic situations. Again, you can't always foolproof that, but if I know they've been standing there for 8 hours because they're cold, that's probably asking for some trouble. So if I blanket them and they go out, cool. One thing to be careful of though is, if you're going to throw a blanket on, you might want to make sure you're around the next day to get it off before the sun comes up or before it gets 50 degrees, like it does here sometimes in the winter. And you don't want to get sweaty under there. So it's definitely a responsibility. And if people don't want to take on that responsibility, I totally get it. But when people just say they're fine, I kind of always chuckle about that because I'm like, what does fine look like exactly? Like, did you ask them? Or if you notice their behavior is fine, they're not behaving any differently than they would before. And, their tail's tucked under them. They might shiver. Shivering is not the end of the world. I get that. But if it is inhibiting their movement, their eating, or they're going out to drink or whatever, then you might consider that to be something you want to step in and help with. I mean, that's when I draw the line. That's when I see that their behaviors change. And I'm thinking just general overall size, but pay attention to just some of the history of your animal, and don't let somebody on the internet convince you that you should be doing something that you're not when you have a completely different animal, different age, different condition, different origins, different size, whatever it might be. So you make the best decision for your animal, and don't care what anybody else says. Just know some things to watch out for and be safe about it. It definitely is something to take on. One thing I will add though too is that people will say, well, putting a blanket on packs their hair down, and then the little, I think it's erector pili, the little muscle that pokes hair up so that they get that nice insulating layer on their own. The blankets will flatten that down, and that is definitely true. And sometimes it takes hours, if not days, for that to come back up. So one thing you want to keep in mind, if you do choose to blanket and you're blanketing with heavy blankets, try not to take those off until you get another nice, warm, sunny day to give them a chance to let that hair stand up again on its own and do what it needs to do to be insulating for them without a blanket. So if you just throw the blankets off in the morning and they're standing out there, that hair isn't going to do its job and insulate them. So yes, it is a pain, something you have to keep in mind. But if you know what you're doing and you pay attention, it's fine to do either or, whatever. But just do what you need to do to keep your animal as comfortable as you can and safe. So I hope that helps, gives you something to think about. And thanks. Bye.